Hi Data Fellows, welcome to the second asynchronous session of July. During today's session, we'll be discussing various effective dissemination methods. Today's session will build on the asynchronous session that was presented in December 2022, which covered considerations that you should make when preparing to present data to various stakeholders. There are two main learning objectives of today's session. The first is that you'll be prepared to deliver data to a variety of stakeholder groups in a manner that accounts for varying wants and needs. And the second is that you will understand the key dissemination methods and when to use each. In many sessions, we've talked about the importance of being able to present your data in a way that is engaging and accessible and leads to change. This quote from a Speaker Hub article emphasizes this point. In the age of analytics, being able to present data in a way that is engaging, valuable, and comprehensible can sift out the great speakers from the good. It can be the difference between sharing a message that resonates or falls flat, and between being booked to speak again or not. During the December session, we walked through 5 steps to assist in you being intentional about meeting the various data needs of audiences. We're going to review steps 1 through 3 now. The first step is to identify the target stakeholders. From the larger audience you'll be sharing data with, identify the smaller stakeholder groups who will be present. Who are they and what do they do? It's important to know your audience to effectively share your data. Sharing is easy, sharing effectively is harder. To be effective, you'll have to narrow in on more specific groups within the wider internal audience and target them by presenting information and data in a way that is meaningful to them. For example, perhaps you're presenting at a campus professional development day. So within the larger campus audience, smaller stakeholder groups who will be present include building admin, teachers, paraprofessionals, and other instructional support staff. Next, we need to identify each stakeholder group's approximate experience level in using related data and the subject area. Obviously, each individual that makes up a stakeholder group will vary, so this should be an approximate estimate of experience level. First, identify the group's data experience. Are they novice, meaning that they have no or very little knowledge about the data that will be presented? Generalist, meaning that they have some knowledge about data that will be presented? Or an expert, meaning that they have an abundance of knowledge about the data that will be presented. Record this in the second column of the worksheet that is linked in the slide. Next, we need to identify each stakeholder group's approximate experience related to in reviewing data related to the topic. Are they novice, meaning that they have no or very little knowledge about the topic that will be presented on? Generalist, meaning that they have some knowledge about the topic that will be presented on? Or an expert, meaning that they have an abundance of knowledge about the topic that will be presented on. Record this in the third column of the worksheet. Knowing the stakeholder group's familiarity with data in the topic of focus will help you tailor your data presentation. For example, if you're reporting on STAR assessment data and your audience is familiar with this assessment in the performance categories, you don't need to spend as much time describing them. Likewise, if your audience is familiar with reading and understanding data charts and displays, you'll be able to spend more time discussing your data and less time explaining how to interpret the data displays. The third step is to tailor the data to be presented to meet the needs of the stakeholder groups. You must answer the question, what data does each stakeholder group need? Use the following probes to identify the specific data needs of each group. How much detail does each stakeholder need? Oftentimes, people want it all, even when they may not actually need it all. How often do the stakeholders need the information? Document the data needs of each stakeholder group in the fourth column of the Presenting Data to Various Audiences worksheet that's presented here and again linked in the slide notes. Once you've identified the reporting needs and capacity of your target audience, we can then dive into the actual development of the data dissemination document. Before we jump into those four main methods of disseminating data, we're going to recover best practices in data visualization. These best practices cover all methods of disseminating data and thus are applicable to each method that we'll discuss. The first important consideration when creating an engaging visual is color. The color should help the audience understand the important elements of the analysis and should not be random. When reviewing a visual, consider the following. The color palette should be intentional. For example, it matches your district colors or branding. It should also be used to highlight important insights. For example, maybe a bar graph is presenting one key point that you want to highlight to your audience, so consider making the other bars gray, and the bar with the data you want to highlight the main color, say purple. This will draw your audience's eyes right to the data point you want them to look at, while allowing them to compare the other points. You should also ensure that the text contrasts with the background, allowing your audience to read it. A quick tip is to project your presentation or print your chart prior to sharing it out. This allows you to view the chart how your audience will. Oftentimes, colors can be distorted when projected or printed, so if this occurs, you'll be able to adjust. Lastly, you'll need to make sure your color is legible when printed in black and white. Two resources that are incredibly useful are the Adobe Color Selecting tool, which you can use to search for color palette inspiration and even upload images to pull colors from. I like to upload an image of the school or district logo and then identify the specific colors that are in the logo and use those in my future visualizations. Another free resource is Color Brewer, which can be used to identify color palettes suitable for printing in black and white and for colorblind audiences. The next important consideration is the use of text in visuals. Text should be used to highlight any insights you have found in the data and include an obvious key takeaway. Let's take a look at the example graph here and how it is using text. First, the title and subtitle, or annotation, is short and descriptive. It tells us what we're looking at in the chart. Responses from a survey of event attendees asking about their breakfast preferences. The bar labels are also included directly in the chart rather than outside of them, increasing the speed of interpretation. The data labels are presented right outside of each bar and are rounded up, not including decimal points. The axis labels are also not used as they're not needed to add to the story. We can also see how color is used in the graph. The teal is used in the bar showing the percent of attendees who don't eat breakfast and is used in the subtitle when referencing that same group. This is also true with the color black. The next important consideration when creating an engaging visualization is arrangement. When you're creating a dashboard or slide that includes multiple pieces of information, consider referencing the Gutenberg diagram arrangement model or rule of thirds. The Gutenberg diagram says that you should put the most important information you want the audience or reader to take from your visual in the top left and the second most important information in the bottom right. This follows the natural progression of the eye. This is exemplified here, showing the entry point on the top left and the exit point being the bottom right. As you create a dashboard or any other visual, consider this model and the natural path that the eye follows. For example, the home button could be at the top left, ensuring they always know how to navigate back to a home page, including any filtering options on the top right, as the eye will naturally navigate there second. and then include any next steps or key impact data that you want the reader to leave remembering in the bottom right. The rule of thirds is a model taken from photography, and in graphic design divides a canvas into 3 even rows and 3 even columns. The 4 central intersections where the lines meet are the key hotspots where you should aim to play your main subjects, as those are where people's attention immediately lands. Some additional considerations in terms of arrangement are that the proportions of the visuals are accurate, being especially careful when using charts that rely on proportions, such as a bubble chart, that the visual includes adequate white space, or at least half an inch between text and visuals, and that data are intentionally ordered in charts. For example, when we look at the previous example bar graph, it's ordered so that the breakfast choice with the highest percent of responses is shown first. The last basic consideration when making an impactful visual is ensuring you've selected the appropriate chart to present your data, and that it includes an appropriate level of precision. When you're beginning to think through how you want to present your data in a chart, I cannot stress this enough, sketch it out on paper. The amount of hours you'll save doing this, instead of jumping right into your software and trying to make a graph and having to adjust it continuously, will be tremendous. Use a chart chooser document to assist in selecting the best visual based on what you are trying to present. Now that we've reviewed how to tailor the data needs to your target audience and visualization best practices, let's jump into discussing various data presentation methods. Most of us can relate to the annoyance of sitting through a boring and weak presentation, reading a lengthy report that has your eyes drying out, or looking at a spreadsheet that's presenting hundreds of rows of data. We understand that it isn't effective, but why do we still keep using them, and why do they still exist? As Stephanie Evergreen states in Presenting Data Effectively, old habits are hard to break. It's important to deliver your data and information effectively in a manner that meets the needs of your target audience. During the next section, we'll discuss 4 key data presentation methods. The first data dissemination method we're going to discuss today are reports. All of us are familiar with reports. They're static documents that ideally contain data in both text, table, and graphic forms. As stated in a blog post by segment.com, data reporting is not unlike news reporting. A journalist gathers information about a story from various sources, then selects what information is most relevant and important to their readers to create an article. In the end, the journalist should have an objective representation of a situation. Data reports help the recipient better understand a situation and frequently form the basis for important decision-making and follow-up actions. An important note to highlight is that reports are usually delivered to various audiences periodically, which means data isn't live. One of the key attributes of reports is that they allow the writer to build a narrative with data and optimize its presentation. For organizations such as school districts with multiple departments and diverse data needs, reports can become very time-consuming. Reports are best used for audiences who are interested in the background of the analysis, including research questions, what prompted the work, and the methodology utilized. These are typically more technical audiences. They are also commonly required for various grants and initiatives. In addition to the key best practices covered earlier, good data reports communicate complex information quickly, saving readers time and making it as easy as possible to understand a topic or situation. Data reports accomplish this distillation of complex information in 2 ways. First is curation. They present relevant data to the reader while leaving out or summarizing information that's not helpful. The second is important and often missed: visualizations. They turn endless rows of numbers in a database into tables, charts, and graphs, making the information more accessible and, most importantly, more engaging for the reader. A helpful reporting model to review is the 1-3-25 model described by Stephanie Evergreen. This reporting model asks us to break down the work into a 1-page handout, a 3-page executive summary, and a not more than 25-page report with as many appendices as you'd like. This way, no matter what level of interest someone has in the work, there's a document of appropriate length that matches their information. For more information on this reporting model, visit Stephanie Evergreen's blog post, Why No One is Reading Your Report, linked in the slide notes. The second method of disseminating data we're discussing is a slideshow. A slideshow is a presentation that includes pictures and information presented on slides. A slide in a slideshow is essentially a single screen of information and is able to display text, charts, and images. Slideshows are popular due to the ease of creating slides and their ability to engage audience in the information being presented. Slideshows are best used when presenting information to a large group of people, and they're often presented along with another medium, such as a report or a dashboard. A slideshow allows you to summarize and present the key information to stakeholders. They also allow you to tell the data story as you provide visuals and a narrative along with the data. While slideshows and presentations are extremely common, they're often done not following best practices. It's incredibly important to follow the best practices presented earlier in this session, considering color, text, arrangement, and chart and graph selection. It's also important to remember that less is more. I like to create a presentation and put everything and anything in it, and then process through the presentation multiple times, each time taking out more information in slides until I get to the point where I'm balancing informational needs with audience capacity to engage with the material. I don't want to overwhelm an audience because I'll lose them and they won't take as much away. Another key best practice to remember is that a brand guide is your best friend. Ensure your presentation uses your district colors, logo, and other marketing communication specifications such as text. This ensures that your work is consistent over time and will be more familiar to your audience. The third dissemination method we'll discuss are one of my favorites, infographics. Infographics are a visual representation of information and data, and typically include a collection of imagery, data visuals, and minimal text. Infographics are nice because they can be printed out and presented as a hard copy or shared digitally via email, or they're often presented on a website. Infographics are great at making complex information easy and fun to digest. They can be really helpful anytime that you want to provide a quick overview of a topic, explain a complex process, compare and contrast multiple pieces of information, and raise awareness about an issue or cause. When you need to give someone a really quick rundown on something that can be hard to explain in words alone, an infographic is a good way to go. They're also great tools for a variety of audiences and are a great tool to use to present information to a working group of people. During data meetings, I like to print them out on a large poster-sized paper and then have multiple of them placed around a room so individuals can engage with the data and provide their feedback and thoughts directly on the poster using a sticky note. An article on LinkedIn described the 4 elements of a killer infographic. Many of these overlap with the best practices we discussed earlier in the session and are applicable to a variety of dissemination methods. The article is linked in the slide notes if you want to check it out. The first element is that they have a clear purpose and focus. The best infographics tell a compelling short story about one topic, rather than trying to cram chapters of information into one design. By streamlining the important information, your target audience can easily digest, share, and discuss the content that's delivered. Create a catchy title to clearly define the purpose of the infographic. The second element is that the infographic has a clean design. Clean design draws readers in and allows them to easily follow the flow of the infographic. Elements that ensure a clean design include color, text, and visuals, as discussed earlier. The third element are visuals, which are key to an infographic. With an infographic, you want to ensure that you don't include too much text and not enough graphics. While you don't have to create a visual for each line of text, it's important to pull out key data points and bring them to life by using a larger font, illustrations, or graphs. You also want to make sure that your visuals are cohesive and similar in style to one another. The fourth and final element of an effective infographic are that they include engaging information and data. Your infographic should highlight recent and relevant information and data that will be useful for your target audience. Use the presenting data to various audiences worksheets presented earlier in this session to ensure that the data that you are including aren't too complex for your audience and for an infographic format. The last dissemination method we'll discuss should be a method everyone is well aware of: dashboards. Dashboards are data visualization tools that can be customized and tailored to display specific metrics, data, and KPIs. Usually, these tools are dynamic and live, so data is being updated in real time and visuals can show changes from minute to minute. Dashboards can meet a variety of needs by being broad and overarching, or can focus on more narrow aspects of an organization. They truly can be adjusted to meet the specific needs of the audience. Dashboards are best used for when real-time data are needed. They can be modified to alert users when specific metrics change or thresholds are met. Dashboards are also interactive and allow users to manipulate the data, providing a deeper dive into the data and allowing for exploratory data analysis to occur. When designing a dashboard, it's important to remember the key visualization best practices we discussed earlier. In addition, it's important that a dashboard tells a story. It isn't just a mashup of data. Data are strategically included and presented in a way that guides users through the dashboard, similar to as though they were reading a book. Effective dashboards also prioritize simplicity, remembering that less is more. When you think your dashboard is finished, go back through it again, ensure that every graphic, visual, and text has a specific purpose and is assisting in telling the story. If not, delete it. Dashboards should also encourage comparisons of data through the inclusion of various filters and longitudinal data points. A dashboard should also use consistent labeling across the dashboards, especially when multiple pages are included. Lastly, an effective dashboard should never stop evolving. Audience needs will continue to evolve, and a dashboard must continue to evolve to meet those needs. That concludes this asynchronous session. Presented here are what we have coming up through the end of July. Our second July synchronous session will be on Tuesday, July 25th from 1 to 2:30. And then we'll have our July Community of Practice on Wednesday, July 26th from 1 to 2 p.m. As always, thank you for listening. Please remember to complete the exit ticket linked in the slide notes here. That allows us to document that you completed the session and provides us with important feedback. Thank you.